guys following any of that?
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that was good.
Okay. So what are our rishis?
Gautama.
Bharadwaj. Okay. Om Gautama Rishihi. Om Atriya Rishihi. Om Bharadwajya Rishihi. Deep breath in. Let's put them all together evenly. Two more times. Meditating on the crown chakra and thinking of the Guru. Using any Guru mantra. Om Jum Sa Vyam Vyasa Deva Sa Jum Om. Slowly opening your eyes. Om Jum Sa Vyam Vyasa Deva Sa Jum Om. So, today we're going to cover Nakṣatras, and if we have time, we'll begin Vimshotri Dasha calculations so that everybody can do it by hand. When I started doing Jyotish, laptops weren't easily available things, so I did my first few hundred charts actually by hand, and got to the point where I remember it was 2002 I ran into a guy and he told me where his moon was, and I calculated his Vimshotri Dasha in my head to know exactly where it was. So it's important to be good with Vimshotri Dasha to really understand it. So we'll do that if we get time at the end. Hopefully we will. But we'll be focusing on Nakṣatras, and Mary's our student lecturer today. And she's done lots of research, so we'll see how much she's understood and gathered.
We'll see that.
And let's see. So our first handout is the yellow one. That's mine, and this white one is Mary's. I'll just open a little bit. So Parashara, what's Parashara tell us about Nakshatras? Anybody know? Does Parashara talk about Nakshatras?
I couldn't find it. I looked.
Anybody? Okay. So Parashara, he tells us in the very beginning. He says, you should know about Nakshatras. Before he even begins, he says, you should know about these from the general scriptures. So he's expecting you to already know. And the way I like to think about it, you see, once you've been in India and experienced Indian reality, is kind of like how everybody generally in America, they know what the sun signs are. They know Aries is a ram and the person's, has a lot of energy. It's just, it's a general common knowledge. In the same way, in India, just the knowledge of nakshatras, it's almost common. It's just a general understanding, and it's kind of all over. It would be almost in the newspapers back then. What's your nakshatra? So he's expecting you to already know this. So he doesn't say anything directly about the nakshatras, except that you should already know them. And he says that in, I think it's the 3rd chapter. Just before, when he's defining what a planet, what a sign is, and what a nakshatra is. But then later he mentions in, like, for example, the Marika chapter, he mentions what nakshatras can kill you. In the dasha sections, he starts mentioning about different nakshatra dashas and the lords of the nakshatras according to Vimshotri, the lords of the dashas according to Ashtotri, the lords of the dashas according to each of the different, he breaks down. And so he never directly gives us anything, but he's utilizing them. And we see him using them. And he tells us we should already know. So we have to use the general Shastra, as according to Parashara. Now, whenever we start talking about nakshatras, it always gets galactic. Nakshatras are kind of a bigger concept of the universe. And if you look, I got this picture right here. That's our galaxy. That's the Milky Way galaxy. And if you look, the top one, the top picture is from looking on top, because our galaxy is kind of like a frisbee. I like to think of it as a frisbee. And if you look at it on top, it's a spiral that looks like this top picture. If you look at it from the side, it looks like this bottom picture. Okay?
Like a big spaceship.
Like a big spaceship, exactly. Now, the center, we have the galactic center. And the galactic center is, it's a mass that everything in the Milky Way is circulating around. Now, our sun is actually towards the outer part of the galaxy. You can see the sun in this diagram. We are 28,000 light years away from the galactic center.
Basically, our planet Earth is like a speck of dust.
Smaller than a speck of dust. If you flip the page, that's another picture of our galaxy. And actually, it didn't print very well. It's a very elaborate picture, because the picture is actually a similar galaxy to ours that was taken through a telescope. And you can see that because our sun is way over there towards the end, when we look at these constellations outside of us, we're not in the galactic center looking at everything around us. We're kind of off to the side looking at everything around us. And this picture is trying to explain where we are in the galaxy and how that's working. Now, because it's kind of a frisbee shape, we see the Milky Way as moving as a band through the sky. And that's the angle that we are actually in the Milky Way. Okay? The nakshatras are seen as the stars that we can see from where we are right now. Now, we divide the sky into 27 based on what? 27 nakshatras. Yeah.
The Milky Way is the galaxy we're in, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's our galaxy.
So we look out and see it. We're in it,
Mm-hmm.
but we're looking toward the galactic center or out toward the blackness.
Well, if you look, it's a spiral,
Right.
and it's kind of a saucer shape,
Mm-hmm.
and we're over to the side.
Mm-hmm.
So when we see more blackness, we're looking at when we see the actual Milky Way, what we see from Earth, we're looking it out towards the actual where all the stars in our galaxy are.
Toward the massive.
So we're looking more towards where all that other stuff is.
Uh-huh.
When we look out more into the blackness, we're looking out into the space that's not our galaxy. Okay. So 27, based on the moon. But doesn't it take how many days from full moon to full moon?
Approximately 27 point something, something, something.
Full moon to full moon?
Or is it 28?
27.3 something.
Full moon to full moon.
15:30.
Full moon to full moon is 29 days. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That was a trick. Very important. Full moon to full moon is 29.5 days. 5306. It's on the page there. Yep, 29.5306. That's full moon to full moon. And that 29 and a half days gets divided into the tithis. 30 tithis. We rounded up that 29.5, we rounded up to 30, and we divide that into 30 tithis. 15 rising, 15 descending. So where's the 27 coming from? Yeah, but how's 27 connected to the moon? If from full moon to full moon, it's 29.5 days.
That's what it takes to go around.
Yeah, the 360 degrees.
Okay, so to go around the 360 degree zodiac, that's 27 days. So we have to differentiate those two realities. And if when we look at the moon, we talk about the Nakṣatra and the Tithi. And the reason we do that is because we're looking at those two different aspects of the moon. To go all the way around the zodiac, that's called the sidereal month. The sidereal lunar month. To go from full moon to full moon, that's the synodic lunar month. Okay?
But there's that little bit left over that they throw in that.
We'll get there.
Okay.
Synodic.
And
The synodic month. The synodic month is full moon to full moon. The sidereal month is, for example, when the moon goes from Aries, 0 degrees, all the way back to Aries, 0 degrees. Or Taurus, 0 degrees, all the way back to Taurus, 0 degrees. So now with this time difference, if it only takes 27 days to go all the way around, but it's 29 days to go to full moon, that means that it's gone all the way around. So let's say the moon's in Aries, and it's 27 days to go all the way around. It's not at full moon yet. It's got another 2 days before it hits full moon. So it hits Aries, where it goes all the way around the zodiac, yet the full moon isn't there. It's 2 more days. So the full moon's falling in Taurus. Now, to go all the way around 27 again, it hits Taurus, that same place. But when the moon comes around, it's not full yet. It's not full until the next sign. Okay? So this is the interaction between the tithis and the nakshatras. There's a slight unalignment that happens. And that gives us the time based on the moon. The tithi and the nakshatra. Okay? Important concept to separate those two realities.
So it will always vary rather than always be.
Exactly. It has to always vary. They're two different numbers. Two very different numbers. So, yeah.
Would the numbers be the same number? Would it be different from month to month? Or is it always 29.5 something?
It varies a little bit.
Varies a little bit.
Yeah. That's a mean number. For various factors. Various times of the year. Nothing in the universe.
Yeah.
And in the Nisargika, the natural universe is exactly the same. There's always these slight variables. They invented the atomic clock, and now that they invented the atomic clock, they realize they need to have leap seconds. Because there's not the amount of seconds that they thought there was. It's a slight variability. And so they're debating whether to have leap seconds or wait every 60 years and have leap minutes. And it's a big debate because if there's a clock in a satellite, you can't just go up and change it very easily. So all of a sudden, if that satellite is a minute off, it can be a big problem for NASA. But so nothing is ever exact, okay? Just that's the rule. So it's important to understand the tithis are based on the phase of the moon. The nakshatra, because it's sidereal, is based on the actual stars that it's moving in space. Okay, it's that map of space that it's moving through. So the nakshatras are mapped onto space. They have nothing to do with the moon phase in and of itself. Okay, that's page 2. And we get 27. Now this 27, we connect them to the 9 planets. If we connect them to the 9 planets, we have 3 sets of 9. And 3 sets of 9, if we divide 360 degrees by 3, what do we have? 120. So the nakshatras give us, from Aries to Cancer, we're getting 120 degrees. So it's dividing up into 3 sets of 120 degrees by each of the 9 planets. These are very important numbers. Very important, right? Yeah. The interchange between the first nakshatra, which is called Ashwini. Actually, we'll talk about this in a little bit. Let's.
Where are you?
I'm on page
3.
3, but it's not numbered anymore. I'm just going to.
It's easy to fix.
Yeah. Okay. We'll talk about it in a minute. Let's flip one more time. 28th nakshatra. So there's 2 different systems, and some people argue one came before the other, or one was imported from the Greeks, or one was imported from China. All these are very uneducated remarks. If you look at the Shastra, the 28 and the 27 are consistently used throughout time. Parashara uses both 27 and 28 nakshatra systems. So sometimes we use 27, sometimes we use 28. What's the difference? When do we use which? Anybody know?
I was just going to ask that.
Any guesses?
Well, it seems like with 28, it upsets the whole mathematical.
There's 2 different ways to do the 28. One way they do the 28 is because it's 27 point so-and-so. They take that extra point 7 days, 7.5 or so days, and they give that its own nakshatra. Others, they evenly distribute it through the whole thing, and I don't agree with that way. The ones that do it, they give just a small little space to this extra amount of time. But when do we use which?
Well, I know it's an important Muhurta to use for Abhijit.
That's a little different concept. Abhijit is the extra nakshatra that's sometimes added based on this extra 7 hours. It's ruled by Hari. Hari means basically God. So we use the 28 nakshatra system generally for spiritually related things. We use the 27 nakshatra for all mundane events.
Can you give an example of the spiritual?
Give an example. We'll be using some.
What do you mean? Do they use
Kala
it in-
chakra, Sarvatabhadra chakra. These are.
You mean for predicting spiritual?
We'll get there. We'll actually apply.
Oh,
the
so-
28 nakshatra. We'll apply both.
Okay.
I'll show you how to use both.
So what about like with pujas? Is that considered spiritual things, or is that falling in the mundane realm for timing?
Depends on what the puja's for. So,
And then how
And-
did
in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna very clearly says, you want it to rain, do pujas to the gods, and you'll quickly get your results. So he's not saying that we don't do puja for only spiritual things. It's grihastra, the householder stage of life. You're supposed to do pujas to make the world a better place. So for both, we're using.
Okay. And then how is this different from the Abhijit Muhurta? Why is that called Abhijit?
We won't talk about Abhijit Muhurta. It's the actual name. It means a successful time.
Okay.
And it's more in, yeah.
The thing I read, it was 28 minutes before and after the midday. And
Exactly. Exactly. But that's Muhurta, that's not Nakṣatra.
Wasn't she talking about Muhurta?
Yeah, yeah, but that's Muhurta, not Nakṣatra.
Right, oh, I know.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's the 28th Nakṣatra, and we'll use both. Next on here I have, this is an excerpt from, Parashar said, use the general Shastra. So this is coming out of Varaha Mihira, and unfortunately it's not my translation. Didn't have time to translate it this week. Makes me sad when I have to use other people's.
Now, one thing I wanted to be clear, because sometimes when I read these things, they're like, oh, okay, these are the descriptions for the nakshatras, but does that mean, is it when you have the moon in these signs, is it when you have the lagna, or you can apply
Primarily the moon is what they're referring to. But in general, it's giving you the qualitative understanding of the nakshatra.
Okay.
Thereby, if your lagna's in it, you're going to have your personality similar to that. If the Lord of the Fourth is in a nakshatra, it's going to give your mother that kind of quality.
Okay.
So it's going to influence everything. It's in general written for the moon, but it's going to give us the qualitative nature of that nakshatra. And that's how it's used. It can't be used too strictly or too, too rigidly. It has to be used very generally. Very generally. And we're going to talk about more specific. We have to begin to understand the nakshatras are based on the moon. They're basically, we have sun signs and we have moon signs. People keep translating them as lunar mansions. And I keep thinking about it. And it's kind of a going very direct translation. But Rashi doesn't directly translate in the sun sign either. It's actually the gathering of degrees of the sun, which is not sign. So I use moon sign and sun signs. So one is the sun signs, one is the moon signs. And as these are the moon signs, it's very important that we feel them. And we have to get a feeling for them. And how do we get a feeling for them? We focus on the primary thing that's going to give us a feeling is the deity of each of these moon signs.
The deity versus the ruling planet.
The ruling planet changes. The ruling planet for the nakshatras in Ashtotri Dasha is different.
Oh, is it really?
Yes. So we use the ruling planets, the Vimshotri lords, for Vimshotri-based techniques. But we have to be careful about putting... A lot of Western writers have put a lot of emphasis on those Vimshotri lords. But the thing is, they aren't set in stone. They change. The deities don't change. The deities always rule that nakshatra. The deities don't trade places. The planets trade places.
So like, for instance, if Saturn rules like Pusha, doesn't mean Pusha is like a real Saturnian quality or
No.
It has nothing,
No.
the ruling planet doesn't have anything to do really with the quality of that. That's what we're talking
Like
about.
Ashwini. In Vimshotri Dasha, it's ruled by Ketu. In Ashtotri Dasha, it's ruled by Rahu. In Shashtihayana Dasha, it's ruled by Jupiter.
Was that your Vimshotri handout?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll be going over that. Because the thing is, to calculate all those different dashas, you need to know the different lords. So that's why it's important not to put too much weight on those lords, because they change.
Maybe not to even go into them. It's
Yeah.
just the deities.
Yeah, because we'll go into them with dashas, which is where they have their dashas and panchangas, where those lords have their main effect, not on interpretation of the not on understanding the nakshatra.
In the birth chart, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
But say like you have a Parivartana between nakshatra lords in the birth chart. Would that connect?
It connects
Make us about
using Vimshotri dasha. All of a sudden we start using Nisargika dasha, we start using Narayana dasha. Is that going to have an effect?
okay.
So we have to, in the proper context, we use them. Okay. So the most important thing is the deity that rules it. The next most important thing is going to be the symbol. Because the deity is going to give us the qualitative nature. We understand how the deity is, what the deity does, and that symbolically teaches us about the energy of that nakshatra. Then the symbol, it's a symbol. It goes into the mind without logic. And it gives us it triggers an understanding of the skills and potencies and powers of a nakshatra. Now the thing is, though, different scriptures and different schools sometimes have different symbols for the nakshatras. So we always take the deity as primary to understand it. Then there's various other things. Each nakshatra has a sex, male, female, neuter. Each nakshatra is Vata, Pitta, Kapha, or is a Brahmin or Kshatriya. All these are used for very specific techniques. Be they marriage making, be they picking a Muhurta, like Vata, Pitta, Kapha. There's only two places I've ever seen it used. One is for marriage making, and it's used primarily to see how the kids are going to turn out. The second is, and I found this in Agni Purana, it talked about when you leave your house on a journey, making sure it's the right Vata, Pitta, Kapha, the difference of going out on these times. It's the only place I've seen in Shastra them used.
Wow.
So these other attributes are used in very specific techniques. And so for my understanding and how I think best to teach is to learn them when we're learning the technique to actually use them. Otherwise, what do you care about Vata, Pitta, Kapha of these if you're not using them? Let's focus primarily on what we will use to understand them, right? Okay.
When you say marriage, you mean compatibility?
Compatibility, genetic compatibility. Yeah. The dosha being of the kuta shows the genetic compatibility. That's my understanding at this point in time.
To be announced.
You'll be at a conference someday, we'll throw out something and it'll be like,
Yeah, who knows what I'll pick up, reading. I just got Sukhanadi the other day. Naughty texts are the best.
where did you get that?
From Ernst.
Ernst was selling some books.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I got all the Sanskrit ones. That's a gem. So, Mary, that sound like a good warm-up. You ready?